Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. We have some mood lighting going on today, and I'm going to be talking about a genre of Japanese literature called Zuihitsu, as well as a few examples of this genre and which of them is my favorite personally. Just before we get things started, if you do enjoy this video, please give it a like. And the second thing is, please forgive me if I say the name of this wrong, Zuihitsu. I'm just going to go with however I'm saying it. So Zuihitsu, in a nutshell, is loosely connected small essays and ideas that often reflect the surroundings of the author who writes it. It's kind of similar to a journal, but it's less rigid in that it isn't just about a person's day-to-day life, but it's also their thoughts on things and even factual statements or recounts of events. So Zuihitsu has a dual meaning of at will and pen. So it truly is about whatever the author feels like writing about at the time in that moment. The balance between these types of entries differs between each book depending on the author, so there's no real formula to it. It's just whatever they feel works for that piece of work. I've enjoyed reading books in this genre because it not only gives you a deep connection with the author and their feelings, but it also paints a vivid picture of the time period they were in, as well as the world they inhabited. So there's three examples of this genre I'm going to talk about today. First is the Pillow Book, second is Essays in Idleness, and the third is Hojoki. I'll talk about them in the order I read them, rather than the order they released in, because I feel like as I read them and moved on to the next, it shaped how I felt about the genre overall. Alright, first of all we have Essays in Idleness. This was the one that started it all for me. I actually picked up this book at a airport on my way back from Japan. It was a very last minute purchase where I just saw it and felt like buying it after flicking through it a little bit. It was written between 1330 and 1332 by a Japanese monk called Kenko, and its main focus is on Buddhist values and ideology, with other ideas mixed in, such as the concept of impermanence, the beauty of nature, and several humorous incidents that he encounters in his life. Essays in Idleness actually ended up being my favorite out of the three for several reasons. First, I think the book is a good length. We get a great idea of who Kenko is and how he feels about things without the journey overstaying its welcome and repeating itself too much. The passages aren't too long, and it feels like you can pretty much start and stop wherever you like. Secondly, I liked the subject matter. The book actually got me to look into Buddhism further, and several of the situations Kenko describes having occurred to him feel very relatable, even though these events occurred hundreds of years ago. I just want to read one quick passage to you that I feel like highlights what I'm trying to get across. He writes, "A person with bad handwriting should not be embarrassed to write his own letters. There is something irritating about people who, pleading that their writing is ugly, ask others to write for them." So he's literally just complaining about bad handwriting. There's a few passages like that that I think just make it very relatable, that even hundreds and hundreds of years ago, we were still having some of the same issues and annoyances as we are today. I'd recommend reading Essays in Idleness if you have an interest in philosophy and discussion of social norms, as that's what I enjoyed the most from this book. I think despite this being longer than Hojoki, it's more accessible as Kenko becomes very relatable when you read his thoughts about others. Second book I read was Hojoki, and this was written in 1212 by Kamo no Kome. Hojoki also has flickers of Buddhist ideology. However, to me, they feel a little less prevalent than how dominant they feel in Essays in Idleness, where it's the majority of the book and its sentiments. A large section of Hojoki is dedicated to documenting natural disasters that occurred during Kome's lifetime that he witnessed, and the subsequent suffering and tragedy as food shortages and starvation affected the land. It's quite sad, honestly. It's split into three sections, and the first section is just called Suffering, where he goes through several different natural disasters that he encounters. Just a short passage from this one where he's talking about a famine that occurred. He says, "Starved bodies lay strewn about the streets, slumped and rigid against the walls of houses. Because they weren't removed, a dreadful stench arose. To look upon those rotting corpses was more than one could bear. So it's very quite depressing. Honestly, the first third of the book where he's depicting these famines and natural disasters that took place that he witnessed. Hojoki is by far the shortest out of the three and can honestly be read in a single sitting. However, it's probably best to space it out a little more than that to probably reflect on everything that he writes about. You can see it's like looks kind of like the same length as Essays in Idleness, but there's very little text on each page. It's more in like a poetry form. I enjoyed Hojoki, but I feel like due to how short it is, it lacked some depth that Essays in Idleness had. I was left wanting more, but as soon as you get into it, the book already ends. I'd recommend Hojoki if you're looking for a quick read. You won't get as much out of it as you could from a larger book, such as Essays in Idleness or The Pillow Book, but it's still a good taster for what the Zuihitsu genre has to offer, and it might leave you wanting more. Lastly, we have The Pillow Book, the book completed in 1002 that popularized the genre. It's believed that The Pillow Book was not intended to be publicly read, hence its establishment of the format, as the author Sei Shonagon collected many stories, lists, and musings over a decade during her time as a court lady to Empress Teishi. The Pillow Book paints a very vivid picture of court life, as it heavily focuses on recountings of events both fictional and non-fictional, with Sei taking great detail, particularly in describing the clothing of court members. The other major focus of the Pillow Book is wordplay used by Sei and others through poetry, with a person's capability of forming witty poems, often making them attractive or desirable. This is just a random section that I'd like to read to just get across how vivid a picture she portrays when she's talking about like clothing. So this is one of her lists, is things of elegant beauty. A pretty girl dressed somewhat casually, without the stiff formal skirted trousers, in a rather loosely stitched girl's over robe. She's sitting at the veranda railing, shielding her face with her fan, and from her sleeve hangs a herb bag or a hair mallet, its long coloured strings dangling. There's plenty of descriptions like that throughout the book, so it paints a very in-depth picture of the clothing and attire that would be worn back then. Despite the Pillow Book being the original Zuihitsu, it was actually my least favourite, unfortunately, as I felt it more resembled a journal due to most of its entries just being factual recounts. We do learn about Sei, but it's through how she is portrayed and perceived in these events, rather than through reading her actual internal thoughts or monologues on various topics. I think after reading Essays in Idleness and Hojoki, I was hoping for more of her opinions on concepts and ideas, but for the most part, she sticks to the tangible physical world and listing or categorizing it. I'd recommend The Pillow Book if you're looking for a window into what life was like during the Heian period in Japan, as the book's strong suit is depicting the events that took place during that time. You won't learn much about Sei specifically or her morals or beliefs, but more so the many traditions and garments that would be worn by court officials during that time. So those are the 3 Zuihitsu books that I've read so far, and they seem to be the most notable 3 examples of the genre. I'm still looking into if there are any other Zuihitsu books that I could get my hands on. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and comment below which book interests you the most, or if there are any other Zuihitsu books you've read that you'd actually recommend, because honestly, I'd be taking recommendations right now. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Everywhere, free rolls in my milk, hey.